So, I was doing some research and I see one of the most asked questions about AFK Journey is who is the best DPS? And actually, it's one of the most searched terms on YouTube. Is like, who is the best DPS in AFK Journey? And so that's what I wanted to do a video about today. Because frankly, there isn't one answer. But before we get into it, guys, I'm kind of closing in on 1,000 subscribers. It would mean a huge amount to me if you guys would subscribe and support the channel. I've made this as my second channel. I've actually not posted on my main channel in ages because I'm spending so much time on this channel. But I really appreciate all the support that I've had so far. But before, let's jump straight into the video. Who is the best DPS in AFK Journey? Well, depends on what stage of the game you're at and depends on what you're trying to achieve, because the best DPS is kind of subjective based on who you're fighting against. But let's simplify it. I'm going to give you the answer for kind of like the early game. So when I talk about early game, I usually mean like AFK stage 1 to 700-ish. And then I'm going to give you an answer for Dream Realm and maybe single target boss focus stuff. I'm then going to give you kind of a mid to late game answer. And then I'll also talk a little bit about PvP. Let's start off with the early game. So most of you are going to get access to this particular hero in the early game. She is a guaranteed pull from your first 10 pulls. You'll get access to Cecia. Cecia is probably the best early game DPS by far. She's got huge AoE DPS. Her Mr. Carlisle does a massive amount of lockdown and a huge amount of DPS. And even now, and I'm at sort of nearly AFK stage 800, Cecia is still one of my primary highest DPSs. Very closely followed by some other people in this list. But it's going to be Cecia. If you're looking for someone to carry you in the early game, out of all of the heroes, even all of the ones that I have, there are other options that will do okay. But Cecia is going to be your biggest champion in terms of getting you through some of these early game challenges. She is incredible. And I'll actually show you even now. So let's go jump into an AFK stage. I actually do need to progress this a little bit. Right. I've got Cecia and Odie here. So let's just kind of jump in with this. This is the AFK comp that I'm running, by the way. I'm going to do a separate video on this. It's very strong. I can kind of just like literally just not pay attention. So even though Odie's been going, we're going to get Cecia's ult down now, and damage is going to start to come through. Cecia's still going with her ultimate. Her auto attacks are pretty strong as well. And even though Odie is obviously great, obviously the longer the fight goes, the better Odie's going to be. You'll see that my Cecia basically nearly like 2.5 times his damage. So Cecia for me is still my primary damage dealer and will be my primary damage dealer. Again, I'm going to add the caveat here. Sometimes your best DPS is just going to be who you've ascended the highest. So I'm adding that in before we get too far into this video. Sometimes it's just who your highest ascended DPS is. The reason Cecia tends to be is that she's a good hero and she tends to be quite highly ascended because you get her early on. A lot of people put her on her wish list and you tend to be able to kind of progress her more than most of your DPSs in the early game. That's why you see so many people run Cecia, because she tends to be the one that most people pick up. And that has been the truth for the early game for me. So Cecia has been kind of the biggest carry for me across PvP even, early game AFK stages, the story, it has all been Cecia. But that eventually starts to change. And that starts to change for me as we get towards the later stages of the game. Now, let's put aside the Iron composition because there isn't like a true best DPS. That's just a comp that is designed to fit together. If you want to pick out one target there, you probably say like Arden or Carolina when their high ascendancy are both very good in that comp. Let's talk about outside of just a single unit that you can slot into most compositions. When you get to the mid to the late game, Odie is going to start to kind of take over for you as a very, very big DPS carry. For levels that you don't just blow up with Cecia, Odie's going to come in clutch. And there is a couple of reasons for that. He's a really good single target DPS. So you're going to find that he's great on Dream Realm, etc. However, when you get him to Mythic Plus, you get this execute that comes with his exclusive weapon. Essentially, you'll see a little bar, a threshold move up, and the more damage that Odie deals to them in terms of poison damage, the higher that threshold becomes, and then he'll instantly execute targets that fall below that threshold. So I'm going to try and jump into another. So when you kind of get to AFK level 700, you're going to have these moments where you've got two separate battles to fight. And in these situations, you need 2 teams to kind of fight. So in my situation, I'm running kind of like an Odie team, and then I'm also running a Cecia team because they form my primary DPSs. And you'll find that Odie comes to shine in these situations because he forms that secondary DPS that you need, especially when he's not as high as ascendancy as my Cecia. Like, my Cecia is always going to out DPS my Odie because she's just a higher ascendancy at the moment. So in this situation, I'm kind of looking to see how I could potentially win this one. This might be tough. You have to do the first one first, and sometimes I have to bring Odie into this team to actually get the win. I have no idea which way Thorin looks like he's ulting completely the wrong way. I think he might actually be. There's the Cecia ultimate. Is it going to be good enough though? That's the question. Doesn't look like it. I think I'm going to struggle. I have Vala as like my 3rd DPS. All right, so doesn't look like, so it looks like I kind of need to get through this Krug. I kind of need to get through this Kruger to win. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring everything back, and we're going to set up another form. So we're going to use Cecia, we're going to use Odie, we're going to use Smokey, and we're going to use Antandro. This is using a lot of my resources, but I think potentially the right call. We also need to get to the back line, so we're going to use Star Shard. The second fight is usually significantly easier than the first, just so everyone's aware. Right, so there we got the Odie popping off now. There's the Star Shard. Boom! Much easier. Odie starting to like execute people, and that one went through super easily. Now we need to get through the second. Okay. Second one, I've already used Odie. So I'm going to use Korin. I'm going to use Rowan. I'm going to use Vala. I'm also going to use Marilee to get as much of the light bearer bonus as physically possible. And I think actually in this situation, I might even end up using Lucius. All right. So these generally tend to be, the second ones generally tend to be easier. However, I have, I mean, you can already see it's significantly easier. We're not taking anywhere near as much damage, and my Vala's going to clean up. But that's where Odie's come in clutch, because I wouldn't have been able to get through that stage without having a secondary DPS in the form of Odie to support my Cecia, as well as like really execute some important targets that you need to get through, especially on the front line. And the second one was significantly easier. Now I just go back to running my main comp, which is this one, and you'll notice that I just, as I've done before, I just breeze through these levels. And Odie just really comes into his own as like a very important secondary DPS. Like here, he's going to get the execute threshold. We've got another one going through. Execute threshold met, so that Marilee's dead. We're going to get another ult coming through. Even before Cecia has even hit her ultimate, without Rowan, of course, Odie has just executed practically everybody. And yeah, just did a huge amount. He actually did less DPS than Cecia because he's lower ascendancy, but sometimes when it comes to these types of engagements, it's the execute that's the more important. And so that was huge. He's also fantastic in the Dream Realm, and that is something else that's really important to note, that when it comes to having a best DPS for the Dream Realm, this is also going to be ascendancy based. So for instance, in the Dream Realm, a lot of people agree that Marilee is probably one of the best single target DPSs in the game when you get her to a certain ascendancy. Korin is very good as well, and Kruger is a great support for those two. However, until you get, really it depends on who your highest ascendancy is. I'm still using Cecia because even though she's not a good single target, she's still my highest ascendancy and still does a buttload of DPS. But Odie also absolutely fantastic in the Dream Realm. Now, when it comes to Dream Realm, it really, again, like I said, really depends on who your ascendancy favors. My personal opinion is that Marilee's probably the best, followed by things like Odie and Korin, but you need them at higher ascendancies. I can't run Marilee, I can't run Korin because I'm at hell difficulty on Dream Realm, which basically means it's impossible for me to run lower ascendancy units because they get one shot by the mechanics. So I'm still running Odie, but Odie will be absolutely fantastic. And another reason that Odie becomes really, really good the higher ascendancy you go is that he has this Supreme Plus. When triple tap hits a poison target, its damage is increased by 1.5 times the dark poison damage dealt per second, which is kind of nutty. Really is nutty. The attacks from this skill are considered normal attacks. it synergizes with the rest of his kit entirely, and it just makes him unbelievable on single target DPS. So that's where I think Odie really starts to shine at higher ascendancies as well versus single target. So that is early game, later game AFK stages, Dream Realm, and bosses. What about PvP? Well, again, the answer is going to be use your highest ascendancy units. However, you'll notice that high-level PvP is dominated by a few different types of things. There is the Iron PvP composition, which you get Iron when you get his exclusive weapon, he casts his ultimate instantaneously. There is also an Arden and a Carolina that go with that. The next kind of most frequent DPS that you're going to see used in PvP is Vala. So when it comes to PvP, Vala is kind of a primary DPS choice because she's one of the only ranged targets in the game that will immediately attack the backline when the game starts. Obviously, you can run things like Sylvina, etc. They all do the same thing. They mark a target and they go for them. But Sylvina will jump straight in, as will a lot of other targets. Vala will attack the backline ranged from the very beginning. If they're above 50%, she'll fire a bullet at them and stun them. If they're below 50%, she'll jump in and look for an execute with true damage. And with her Mythic Plus upgrade, where she turns invisible, once she has, which I actually really need to upgrade this to, I'm actually going to upgrade this to +5 because it makes it's a really, really, really good upgrade. She gains, I think, once I have a look, I can't remember what she gains. She gains movement speed and haste when she gets the kill, which basically then means she tears apart the entire backline. So she is probably one of the primary forms of DPS that you're going to see used in PvP. And you'll probably see Sylvina used for a similar reason outside of the Iron compositions, but Vala is going to be your go-to for a lot of PvP because she just has such good single target damage execute potential, and obviously then when she gets that execute, she will just start to snowball and pop off and start killing everything. So yeah, she's really fantastic in that regard. And that is actually, I will show you. I don't know how many PvPs I've actually got left. Let's jump into Arena and Challenge, and I'll show you. What am I at? I'm at 471k. Guess I'll just go for the hardest opponent. Okay, so he's running a Vala on his side. So yeah, I'm actually intentionally putting Thor on the back line here because I'm actually gonna make sure I focus his Vala. I'm putting Thor on the back line because I don't want my Vala to get targeted here. But we'll go for Iron Wall because of the Cecia, which I think is pretty good. And then you just need to watch my Vala. This person's using Vala as well. Actually, looks like I've been focused now. Looks like Thorin's moved out. But there's my Cecia. She's already used it. And I'm going to jump in and execute. We get haste. Massive increase. Cecia is effectively dealt with one of the key targets. And although, obviously, my Cecia has done a load of damage here, my Vala was also fantastic at just making sure the backline was dealt with. Obviously, in general, when it's an AoE situation, Cecia is going to thrive because she does a huge amount of AoE damage, but Vala did a pretty significant amount of damage and found some key executes as well. So you'll find that in PvP, you generally tend to see a lot of Vala used as well. That is everything from this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it and you know where to invest some resources for your late game DPS potential. Obviously, I'm going to add a caveat right here. There is a meta comp that is Iron, Arden, Carolina, but they all suck until you get them to like Mythic Plus. So obviously you want to aim for that comp if you can, but in terms of individual units that can be slotted into lots of different situations, Vala for PvP, Odie for single target, and also later game AFK stages, and Cecia, they can all be fit into compositions by themselves, which is kind of what the point of this video is. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you soon.